Hey there. My name is Sir Rowan Thorne, a freelance knight who's spent the last 5 years wandering the borderlands between human territories and orc clans. I don't swear fealty to any lord or banner, never have. It's easier that way. No oaths to break, no families to mourn when things go wrong. I take jobs as they come, escorting caravans through rough passes, guarding isolated farms from bandits, or scouting trails that no one else wants to touch. The pay is meager, but it keeps me fed and moving. My life is a rhythm of saddle sores, cold camps, and the occasional tavern brawl. I've got scars from blades that missed my vitals by luck, and a sword that's more reliable than most people I've met. War, I've seen enough to know it's not glory, it's just blood-burnt grass and mistakes that cost lives. But I never imagined it'd land me in the middle of an orc camp, wrists bound in rawhide, waiting for a woman to seal my fate with a single glance. That day's escort was supposed to be straightforward. A small trade caravan hauling salt-tanned hides and forging tools from Greymere Valley up through Stonejaw Pass, aiming to barter for grain in the lowlands beyond. 8 wagons, a dozen merchants, and a handful of guards like me hired swords with no stake in the goods, just the coin. I rode at the rear eyes, scanning the jagged slopes where boulders clung like uneasy teeth. The air was crisp, laced with pine and the faint metallic tang of distant forges. Hooves clattered on loose gravel, and the merchants chattered about profits, oblivious to the way the wind carried echoes that could hide an ambush. I'd done this route before. It was risky, but not suicidal. Orc raids were sporadic here, more theft than slaughter, or so the rumors went. I kept my hand near my hilt, not out of paranoia but habit. Inner voice nagging, "Stay sharp, Rowan. One slip and you're meat." The attack came like a blade from the shadows, swift, silent, inevitable. Arrows hissed from the underbrush first, thunking into wagon sides and felling a horse mid-stride. The animals screamed, buckling, and chaos erupted. Merchants yelled, scrambling for cover. Guards drew steel, but the orcs were already upon us, dark shapes bursting from the trees, not roaring like beasts in tails, but moving with the precision of hunters who've done this 100 times. I spurred my mount forward, slashing at the first one, who lunged, a broad-shouldered brute with a spear aimed at a fleeing traitor. My blade caught the shaft, splintering it, and I drove my boot into his chest, sending him sprawling. "Get behind the wagons!" I shouted to the others, pulling a merchant clear of a swinging club. Adrenaline surged, sharpening everything, the metallic clash of weapons, the acrid smell of fierce sweat, the burn in my shoulder from a glancing blow. But they outnumbered us 3-1. I parried an axe swing that nearly cleaved my arm, countering with a thrust that drew green blood. Pain exploded in my side as a mace-connected crack of bone, white-hot agony. I staggered but stayed upright, not from bravery, but survival instinct. Panic kills faster than steel. Another orc charged. I sidestepped, tripping him into the dirt, but the world blurred. A final strike to my helmet sent stars bursting, and darkness swallowed me whole. When I came to, my head throbbed like a forge hammer, and my wrists were lashed tight with leather cords that bit into skin. I was on my knees in a line with the surviving captives, 5 men bloodied and broken, murmuring pleas or curses. Orc warriors prodded us forward, their grips firm, but not cruel. No taunts, no unnecessary blows, just efficiency. We marched through arid badlands, the ground shifting from gravel to packed earth dusted with dry grass. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows. Exhaustion gnawed at me, but I focused on breathing steady, assessing weapons gone, armor stripped to basics. Escape not yet. Wait for a slip. The camp emerged like a fortress of hides. Circular tents of thick leather ringed a wide central clearing, smoke curling from fire pits carrying scents of roasting meat and smoldering pine. Children peeked from behind skirts, wide-eyed at the strangers. Warriors stood, sentinel axes slung casually, but their silence chilled me more than any war cry. No jeers, just watchful eyes tracking our every stumble. The captives ahead whimpered. One begged for mercy. I kept quiet. Noise draws attention, and attention here could mean a quick end. A ripple of deference spread as the chieftain emerged from the largest tent. He was tall, silver hair, braided long eyes, sharp as honed flint, not dulled by age but tempered. A necklace of beast fangs and carved bones dangled from his neck, symbols of clan triumphs. The air stilled when he spoke, his common tongue accented but clear. "You are not taken to die for old grudges. Blood has flowed too long. To end it, we need a bond that ties the shores together." He gestured, and she stepped forward, a woman orc with the bearing of someone born to burden. Straight-backed, calm-eyed, her dark hair tightly braided with small stone beads marking status. She didn't smile or scowl. She scanned us like assessing timber for a bridge, practical, unemotional. The chieftain's voice boomed, "Choose one to be your husband." Gasps ripped through the line. Men shouted their worth, one boasted hunting skills, another swore servitude, a third collapsed begging. I said nothing. Pleading exposes weakness. I'd learned that in too many skirmishes. She walked the row, ignoring the pleas, the bows, the bravado. Then she stopped before me. Time stretched. Her gaze lingered, not curiosity, but calculation. I met it steadily, pulse-hammering, but face blank. "Choose!" the chieftain urged, his tone brooking no delay. She lifted a hand, brushing my arm lightly like sealing a pact. "This one," she said. Murmurs erupted, hisses from the spurned captives, a ripple through the orcs. A warrior stepped up, slicing my bonds. Blood rushed back, stinging, but freedom tasted sharp. She turned without a word, striding toward a large tent at the center. I lingered a beat, watching her retreating form, the weight settling. From prisoner awaiting judgment, I'd become the thread in their weave. And threads, if snapped, unravel everything in blood. The tent's interior surprised me with its warmth, a stark contrast to the chill settling over the camp outside. A small fire crackled in a stone-ringed pit at the center, casting flickering shadows on the taut leather walls. The air carried a soothing blend of dried herbs and tanned hides, not the dank musk I'd half expected from orc dwellings. Everything was arranged with deliberate order, rolled furs stacked neatly against one side, a low wooden table holding a few clay bowls and tools, and woven mats covering the dirt floor. No clutter, no excess, just the essentials of someone who knew how to endure without waste. Shara entered first, letting the heavy flap fall behind me, muffling the distant murmurs of the camp. I positioned myself near the entrance instinct, screaming to keep an escape route open, even if logic told me running now would be suicide. She didn't command me to kneel or bow. Instead, she moved with quiet purpose, dipping a clay cup into a kettle simmering over the flames and offering it to me. Steam rose in lazy curls, carrying a faint earthy scent. "Drink," she said, her voice steady and matter-of-fact, like tending to a wounded animal rather than a captive. I stared at the cup, suspicion coiling in my gut. Was it drugged? A test, but her eyes held no mockery, no hidden intent, just practicality. My throat was parched from the march, my body aching for relief. Reluctantly, I took it, the warmth seeping through my calloused fingers. The liquid was plain water, heated just enough to chase away the bone-deep cold. I sipped slowly, feeling it ease the tightness in my chest, steadying my breaths. It was a small mercy, but in that moment it felt like a crack in the armor of hostility I'd braced for. Shara sat cross-legged near the fire, maintaining a distance that wasn't threatening, but allowed space enough for me to not feel cornered, yet close enough to converse without shouting. She watched me with the same assessing gaze she'd used outside, as if measuring not just my strength but my resolve. I lowered the cup, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. The silence stretched heavy with unspoken questions. "What's your name?" she asked finally, her common tongue precise though laced with the guttural edge of her native speech. I hesitated. Names were power in the Borderlands' tools for tracking debts or enemies, but withholding mine now felt pointless. I was already bound. "Sir Rowan Thorn," I replied. "A free knight." She nodded once, committing it to memory without flourish. "I am Shara, daughter of Chieftain Gorak of the Bloodstone clan." The title hung in the air, confirming what I'd suspected from the deference outside. She was no ordinary warrior. Her choices carried the weight of the entire camp. I shifted my weight, the ache in my shoulder reminding me of the ambush. "I don't know what you want from me," I said, keeping my tone even, probing without aggression. Shara's eyes flicked to the flames, her expression unchanging. "I want the war to end. My father wants the war to end. But words alone don't stop blades. We need a tie that makes both sides pause before striking." I understood then the marriage wasn't about affection or alliance in the romantic sense. It was a rope knotted around wolves' necks, forcing restraint. A political bind, cold and calculated. And if I refuse, I ask not as a challenge, but to map the boundaries of this cage. Her gaze met mine, unflinching but with a shadow of steel. If you refuse in front of the camp, you humiliate me. Then my father cannot shield you from those who would see my weakness as the clan's. I swallowed hard, the implication sinking in. Death wouldn't come from an executioner's axe, but from the subtle knives of honor and pride. In orc culture, as I'd glimpsed from Bordertail's face, was everything losing it invited retribution. I won't humiliate you, I said quietly, the words tasting like a vow I hadn't intended to make. She studied me for a long moment, as if peeling back layers to check for hollow promises. The fire popped, sending sparks dancing upward. Satisfied, or at least willing to proceed, she rose and fetched a spare blanket from a stack, laying it near the hearth. You sleep here. I sleep by the door. It was a clear division protection for me under her roof, but no illusions of intimacy. No one touches you while you're in my tent, but you don't leave the camp without permission. Understand? I nodded, settling onto the mat. The blanket was coarse but warm, a far cry from the cold ground I'd endured on patrols. That night, as the camp's noises faded to the occasional rustle of wind against leather, I lay staring at the tent's peaked ceiling. The fire's glow dimmed to embers, casting a soft red hue. My mind raced escape routes, potential allies among the captives, the risk of betrayal. But woven through it all was Shara's presence. She sat near the entrance, her back to me, silhouetted against the flap. From where I lay, I could see her shoulders slump ever so slightly when she thought I wasn't watching a rare crack in her composed facade. She wasn't just selecting a husband on orders. She was bearing the weight of a fragile piece, a bridge built on her choices alone. For the first time, I felt a flicker of something beyond survival empathy for the woman who'd pulled me from the line not out of whim, but necessity. And in that quiet, I realized she wasn't unbreakable. She was just very good at pretending. The morning light filtered through the tent flap, pulling me from a restless sleep. My body ached from the previous day's ordeal. The bruises from the ambush blooming purple across my ribs, the raw spots on my wrists where the bonds had chafed. Shara was already up, her silhouette moving efficiently as she stoked the embers back to life. She glanced at me without a word, but there was a subtle nod acknowledging I'd survived the night without incident. I rose, folding the blanket with care, not wanting to disrupt her ordered space. Outside the camp stirred the low murmur of voices, the clatter of cookware children darting between tents like shadows in the dawn mist. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of dew-soaked earth and fresh-baked flatbread from nearby fires. Shara led me out without preamble, her stride purposeful. Eyes followed us, curious, wary, appraising. Not outright hostility, but the weight of judgment hung heavy. She didn't hold my hand or hover. She walked beside me, close enough to signal I was under her protection, but far enough to let me stand on my own. We stopped at a section of fencing near the livestock pens where a post had buckled, leaning precariously, the ropes slack and frayed. Hoofprints marred the mud around it, evidence of some animal's escape attempt. "Fix it," she said, simply crossing her arms. I knelt, inspecting the damage. The wood wasn't rotted, just dislodged from its groove by force. No tools handy, so I scavenged a nearby stone for a makeshift hammer, wedging the post back into place and pounding it steady with measured strikes, careful not to splinter it. The ropes needed retying. I looped them in a secure knot I'd learned from rigging field tents during campaigns, pulling tight until the fence stood firm again. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool air, the labor a welcome distraction from the stairs boring into my back. A group of young warriors lingered nearby, sharpening axes and watching with barely concealed skepticism. One stood out, Braca, broad-shouldered with a scar twisting across his jaw, his eyes sharp and simmering with resentment. He was the type who'd earned his tusks in real fights, not drills, and he looked at me like I was a stain on the clan's honor. "Work is easy for a human," he grunted loud enough for the others to hear. "But loyalty, that's another matter." I didn't rise to the bait, focusing on the final knot. Inner tension coiled, provoking him could end badly, but showing weakness might invite worse. The others murmured, waiting for my response. Braca stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "You came from that caravan. Maybe you've killed our kin before, humans like you always have blood on your hands." I straightened, meeting his gaze levelly, not defiant, but unflinching. "I hire out to protect," I said. "Not to hunt orcs. If I've crossed blades with yours, it was in defense." He sneered. And yet you carry a sword. What's to say you won't turn it on us when the wind shifts? The group tensed hands, inching toward weapons. I felt the precariousness of my position like walking a frayed rope over a chasm. You carry one too, I replied evenly. If you want to fight, you'll find an excuse. If you want peace, look at what I'm doing today. Braca paused, his jaw clenching. The others exchanged glances, the air thick with unspoken challenge. Shara, who'd been observing from a short distance, didn't intervene immediately. She let the moment hang, forcing me to hold my ground. Finally, she approached, testing the fence with a firm push. It held solid. Enough, she said, her voice cutting through the standoff. Turning to Braca, he works. Braca didn't back down fully, but he grunted and turned away, the group dispersing with mutters. It wasn't victory, but it was a step back from the edge. As they left, I exhaled slowly, wiping dirt from my hands. Shara gave me a brief, appraising look, not approval exactly, but recognition that I'd navigated the confrontation without escalating it. The days blurred into a routine of labor after that. Shara assigned tasks that kept me visible but useful, helping erect drying racks for meat near the river where the cool breeze carried the tang of rushing water and fish scales. I hauled logs from the edge of the woods, my muscles burning under the weight, stacking them neatly for the communal fires. Digging pits for waste or storage, the earth yielding grudgingly to my shovel, borrowed from a wary elder who watched me like I might steal it. I observed their ways, how they organized granaries with meticulous rotation to prevent spoilage, how elders mediated disputes with words before fists, how children were tasked with small chores to learn responsibility. The camp wasn't the savage horde of border tales. It was a community structured and resilient, forged in the harsh borderlands. Many still eyed me warily like a spark that could ignite dry tinder. Whispers followed me, questions about my loyalties, murmurs that I was a spy or a curse. But as days passed, the hostility softened fractionally. A woman handed me a water skin without prompting during a long haul. A child stared less fearfully, even giggling when I fumbled an orc word for thank you. Evenings I was permitted near the chieftain's family fire circle, not as a guest of honor, but as one present. They passed me a bowl of stew, rich with venison and roots without fanfare. Acceptance here wasn't declared. It seeped in through repeated actions like rain soaking parched soil. I thought this fragile equilibrium might hold until the signs of trouble appeared. It was midday when Braca and a few hunters returned early from patrol, their faces grim. They reported directly to Gorak human riders spotted on the ridge, armored and scouting slowly, eyes fixed on the valley below, searching for tracks or perhaps survivors from the caravan. My stomach knotted. They were looking for captives for me or any excuse to stir the pot. Word spread like wildfire through the camp, shifting the atmosphere from routine to taut vigilance. Children were herded closer to tents, warriors checked bowstrings and sharpened blades, elders huddled in low conversations. The air thickened with unspoken fear, not of death, but of the cycle reigniting. I felt the shift personally, like a noose tightening. Even if I hadn't summoned them, my presence here could spark bloodshed. Braca shot me a glare as he passed, muttering something about human bait. Inner turmoil churned. I'd come as a prisoner, stayed as a bridge, but now I risked becoming the fracture. Shara found me behind the tent, her expression darker than I'd seen. She pulled me aside, away from prying ears. If they spot you here, she said lowly, they'll claim we kidnapped you. It'll give them cause to attack. I know, I replied, the weight pressing on my chest. Her jaw tightened. And if they attack my father, we'll retaliate. The truce dies. For the first time I saw fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for the responsibility crumbling in her grasp. The bridge she'd built was cracking, and I was the fault line. I won't let that happen. I said the words firm, despite the uncertainty roiling inside. She searched my face, gauging if it was bravado or truth. In that moment, our fates intertwined deeper, the political tie edging towards something personal. The chieftain's summons came swiftly after the hunter's report, pulling the camp's elders and key warriors into a tense circle around the central fire pit. I stood at the edge, Shara beside me, her presence a silent anchor amid the growing storm. The air hummed with urgency, sharpened blades glinting in the afternoon light, murmured debates rising like smoke, Gorak wasted no words. Humans scout the ridge. They seek their lost or an excuse to spill blood. Arguments erupted. One elder suggested hiding me in the deep woods until they passed. Another advocated binding me and sending me out alone as a gesture of goodwill. Braca, ever the voice of distrust, cut through sharply. He brought this shadow. Let him go face them. If he dies, it's one less tie to sever. I felt the weight of eyes on me, my pulse steady, but my mind racing. Running now would paint me a coward, and worse, confirm every suspicion that I was a liability. Shara stepped forward, her voice calm, but edged with steel. Send him alone, and he dies before speaking. They'll claim we murdered him and use it as fuel for raid parties. The truce crumbles. Her words hung, shifting the debate. She wasn't defending me out of sentiment. It was strategy protecting the fragile bridge she'd built. Inner conflict gnawed at me. I hadn't asked for this role yet. Here I was, the fulcrum on which peace teetered. Gorak listened, his silver braids swaying as he nodded thoughtfully. We meet them at the river's edge, far from the tents, away from the young. Block their path without drawing first blood. His gaze landed on me. You will be there, human. Speak truth, but no recklessness. I met his eyes, understanding the unspoken. This was my test. Fail, and the clan might reconsider my worth. Succeed, and perhaps I'd earn more than tolerance. As the group dispersed to prepare, Braca shot me a glare, but there was a flicker of reluctant curiosity beneath it, like he wondered if I'd break or hold. We moved out as the sun dipped toward the peaks, a small party of warriors, 10 orcs, including Braca and Gorak with me in their midst. The path wound down to the river, the ground crunching under boots, the air growing cooler with the water's proximity. The stream rushed cold and clear its surface, shattering sunlight into glittering shards on the rocks. Wind whipped through the valley, carrying scents of dry grass and faint iron blood, or rust hard to tell. We positioned ourselves on the near bank axes, loose, but ready, a wall of green-skinned resolve. I stood slightly forward, heart pounding but face composed. Inner voice steadying. You've faced ambushes before, Rowan. This is just words as weapons. They appeared on the far ridge, first silhouettes against the sky, then resolving into riders. 6 humans in light armor cloaks, billowing swords sheathed but hands near hilts. Scouts, not a full war party, but enough to probe and provoke. The leader urged his horse down to the opposite bank, reining in with a splash. Captain Halden. I recognized him instantly from border taverns, a man who thrived on turning skirmishes into crusades. His eyes widened at the sight of me amid the orcs, then narrowed with a dry, knowing laugh. Sir Rowan, he called across the water, voice laced with mock surprise. Alive and consorting. The border whispers of your capture, but this... The others behind him shifted hands, twitching toward weapons. Tension crackled like dry lightning. I stepped to the water's edge, the chill seeping through my boots, positioning myself in the neutral space between banks visible to both sides, allied to neither in that moment. I'm alive, I replied, projecting calm. Inner turmoil surged. One wrong phrase and blades would fly. Halden leaned forward in his saddle. Captured, then tortured, speak freely, knight. We're here to extract you. His words were bait designed to elicit a cry for help, to frame the orcs as villains. I held his gaze, the river's roar filling the pauses. No torture, I said clearly, loud enough for all to hear. I was taken in fair combat during the caravan raid. Treated as a prisoner under their laws, no chains now, no threats. Murmurs rippled through both groups. Halden's smile faltered slightly. Fair combat, he scoffed. Orcs don't know fair. Come across, we'll get you home. This was the crux. Crossing now would shatter everything, label Shara's choice a farce, invite retaliation. Staying silent would brand me a traitor. I drew a breath, the wind tugging at my cloak. I stand on my own feet, I declared. No blade at my throat. I've been chosen as a bond for peace, a husband to bridge the clans and stop the endless raids. Gasps from the humans, a low rumble from the orcs. Inner resolve hardened. This wasn't just survival, it was choosing a side without fully abandoning my own. Halden's face twisted. Chosen or coerced. You're deluded, Thorn. Cross now, or we'll assume you're held against will. Gorak stepped forward, then his presence like a mountain shifting. We seek no war, he boomed voice carrying over the water, but cross this river with intent to harm, and we answer in kind. The standoff stretched horses, stamping impatiently, the sun casting long shadows across the foam. Halden's men gripped reins tighter, eyes darting. I pressed, "Don't cross. I've seen no cruelty here. Report that tell them a knight lives freely working toward truce. If you want blood, you'll find it, but not because of me." Halden waited, his calculation visible. Push, now risk a fight. Retreat, lose face, but live to inflame others. Finally, he spat into the river. "Fine. We'll say you're alive and wedded to beasts. But this isn't over, Thorn. Borders don't forget." He wheeled his horse, signaling retreat. They ascended the ridge, dust trailing, leaving echoes of hooves and unspoken threats. Relief washed over me, mingled with exhaustion, my back slick with sweat despite the chill. As we turned back, Braca clapped my shoulder roughly, his grip firm, but not hostile. "Didn't fold," he muttered a grudging admission. Gorak met my eyes longer, saying simply, "You spoke no lies." The walk to camp felt longer, the weight of what I'd done settling in. I'd stood between worlds, defending a peace I hadn't sought. Inner reflection churned. Was this betrayal to my kind, or the first real choice I'd made beyond survival? Shara waited at the camp's edge, her stance, rigid eyes locked on me as we approached. She didn't rush forward, but the relief in her posture was palpable. "You returned," she said softly, almost to herself. "I said I wouldn't break the thread." I replied, meeting her gaze. In that moment, the distance between us narrowed, not erased, but bridged by shared burden. I glimpsed the toll on her, the fear she'd masked, the responsibility she carried alone. Our fates were knotted tighter now, and for the first time it didn't feel solely like chains. The night after the standoff at the river felt like the calm before a greater storm, the camp wrapped in an uneasy hush. Fires burned low, casting long shadows that danced across the tents like restless spirits. I sat outside our shelter, staring into a small blaze I'd kindled, the crackle of wood a soothing counter to the whirlwind in my mind. The events of the day replayed endlessly, Halden's mocking grin, the river's roar, the weight of words that could have ignited war. I'd lived my life dodging bindings, oaths, loyalty's roots that could be ripped away. Yet here I was, tethered to a fragile peace, my choices rippling out to affect an entire clan. Inner doubt whispered, was this folly, a free knight playing at diplomat? But beneath it, a quiet resolve stirred. For once, standing firm had felt right, not just necessary for survival. Shara emerged from the tent, her footsteps soft on the packed earth. She didn't speak at first, simply settling beside me on a log, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. The firelight played across her features, highlighting the subtle lines of fatigue around her eyes, the toll of leadership she hid so well during the day. We sat in companionable silence for a time, the night sounds enveloping us. Distant owl calls, the occasional snort of a penned beast, the wind sighing through the pines encircling the camp. Finally, she broke the quiet, her voice low and reflective. "I chose you because you do not break easily." I turned to her, the flames reflecting in her dark eyes. "And you had to choose because your father commanded it." She didn't deny it, her gaze fixed on the embers. "Yes, but even in obedience there are ways to choose. I could have picked one who begs, who flatters, who cowers. I did not." The admission hung between us, a thread of vulnerability in her otherwise armored demeanor. I pondered it, the fire's heat warming my face as I replied, "You chose a stranger knight and staked your clan on it." Shara met my eyes, then searching for something, perhaps judgment, perhaps understanding. "Do you think I was wrong?" I paused, weighing my words. The truth bubbled up unfiltered. "I think you're braver than most I've known." She didn't smile immediately, but a subtle softening touched her expression, as if testing the sincerity. The moment stretched the fire, popping softly. Then she continued, her tone shifting to something more guarded. "I do not need you to love me now. I need respect for my laws, for me." "I can give that," I said, meaning it. Respect had kept me alive in the borderlands. Extending it here felt like a natural extension. She nodded but pressed further, her voice dropping even lower. And staying, is it fear of death that holds you, or do you choose this? The question pierced deep, forcing me to confront the shadows I'd long evaded. I could slip away in the dead of night, steal a horse, vanish into the hills, reclaim my wandering life. No one would pursue a ghost. But the cost Halden would twist my flight into proof of orc treachery, rallying raids that would burn this camp, slaughter the children who'd begun to lose their fear of me. Shara would bear the shame her judgment questioned, her bridge collapsed. And deeper still, a reluctant truth these days of labor, of earning wary nods, had chipped at my isolation. I looked at her strong, burdened, yet unyielding, and felt the shift. I stay because you chose me, I said. But from today, I stay because I choose you. I choose to hold this line, to speak truth when it matters. Her eyes widened, fractionally surprise flickering before she composed herself. Slowly, she extended her hand, not in possession, but invitation. I took it, her grip firm and calloused from years of wielding responsibility. In that clasp, something unspoken passed, a mutual acknowledgement of the path ahead. From the shadows near his tent, Gorak observed his nod, brief but approving, sealing the moment without intrusion. The following days unfolded with subtle changes like spring thawing frozen ground. Braca no longer sought petty provocations. Instead, he assigned tasks with gruff instructions, occasionally pausing to ask about a knot technique or fence reinforcement. "How do humans brace against wind?" he'd mutter, and I'd demonstrate our exchanges evolving from tension to tentative utility. Other orcs softened too, the stares less like daggers, more like cautious appraisals. A woman shared a tool without hesitation. An elder nodded in passing. Children, once skittish, now darted closer, giggling at my clumsy attempts at orc phrases. Crag Thul, I'd mangle for thank you, earning wide grins. The camp felt less like a cage, more like a web I was weaving myself into, one strand at a time. But peace demanded formal anchors. One afternoon, as we repaired a water trough near the river, the cool spray misting our faces, Shara pulled me aside. "We need the right of acknowledgement," she said. "Without it, you're still a guest. Guests can be cast out when winds change." I understood. To solidify the bridge, we had to drive the posts deep. Inner apprehension stirred rituals bound tighter than ropes, but refusal would undermine everything. "What does it require?" "Stand before the fire circle. Swear to uphold our laws, no betrayal, no dishonor, no commands in my name without cause." Her eyes held mine. "And declare you're not forced." That evening, the clan gathered around the central blaze, flames roaring high, illuminating faces etched with history's scars. The air thrummed with anticipation, the scent of smoke and herbs thick. I stood at the circle's heart, the heat pressing against my skin like judgment. Gorak presided, his voice resonant. "This bond ties shores. Break it, and peace fractures." I spoke first my words, carrying over the crackle. "I stand on my own feet. No chains bind me. No threats compel me. I choose to remain." The declaration echoed in my chest, not hollow, but resonant. My heart no longer raced with the urge to flee. Instead, it beat with purpose. Shara stepped forward, her braids catching the firelight. "I chose him not by command alone, but because I trust him to hold steady in the storm." Murmurs rose, not doubt, but a budding consensus. The rite concluded with Gorak's nod, the clan dispersing with a sense of closure. For the first time, I felt the shift from outsider to part of the weave. That night, back in the tent, Shara sat by the hearth, her posture relaxed in a way I'd rarely seen. The flames danced, casting a warm glow. "If Halden returns with more," she asked quietly, "what will you do?" "I'll stand where needed," I replied. "Block their view of the young. Deny them excuses. Speak truth again." She nodded approval in her eyes. Then softer, "I chose you to bridge, but perhaps I chose you because I'm weary of strength alone." The vulnerability struck me. I moved closer. "Then from now you're not alone in it." The fire sighed, the camp quiet beyond. In that shared warmth, belonging took root, not forced, but chosen. The border still bristled with fangs, but here, in this tent, hope flickered fragile yet alive.